A jam-packed house at Arlington's Town Hall as residents from here and the surrounding area celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Why Dr. King's dream, expressed nearly 60 years ago, is still very much in the forefront in these politically charged times. Site work for Arlington's new high school begins in the next few weeks. The AHS Building Committee just released a rough draft of the timeline for this massive project. What can we expect in the next 3 to 6 months? We'll bring you up to date. 50 years ago, the Old Schwamb Mill was due for demolition. 50 years later, it is a living, breathing museum and is currently celebrating the tireless work of women preservationists, including the very visionary who saw the value of preserving this unique piece of Arlington's rich history. We'll have a report.
From McLennan Park to Spy Pond, from Poets Corner to the Mystic River, we have Arlington covered. We're your neighbors, a friend you can turn to. This is ACMi News.
And then there were 4. Hello, I'm Tyler Valancourt.
And I'm Brenda Mahoney. There are now 4 people running for 2 open seats on Arlington's Select Board.
Earlier this week, Joe Curran took out nomination papers for 1 of 2 seats on the board. And the former school committee member joins incumbent Diane Mahan, Sean Harrington, and Len Diggins to serve on the town's 5-member board. Diggins works as a production operations assistant here at ACMi.
Meantime, for school committee, incumbent members Bill Hayner and Paul Schlipman are running for re-election. But Jennifer Suss, whose seat is up, is not. The 6-year veteran tells ACMi News she's proud of the strides made as a member of the board, from encouraging more public engagement to having the same application deadlines for after-school care providers to make it easier on parents. She says she'll miss being part of the superintendent search and plans to advocate for school committee members to be paid, just like the select board. Town meeting member Liz Exton tells us she'll be running to take the open seat. Finally, Janice Weber of Crescent Hill Avenue, Patty Sawtell of College Avenue, and Juliana Brazil of Coolidge Road have taken out papers for town clerk. This year's town election is set for April 4th.
Well, some of Arlington's leaders attended a training course at Town Hall January 22nd. The National League of Cities Race, Equity, and Leadership held this event designed to provide training to the Select Board regarding equality. Members of the public were invited to attend this 4-hour event, and this comes in the wake of some incidents that have cropped up in Arlington in recent months involving racism, anti-Semitism, and anti-immigrant sentiment. It's hoped that this training course helps in creating an awareness that everyone has a voice and deserves to be respected and protected.
Arlington held its 32nd annual Dr. Martin Luther King birthday observance this week.
It was a celebration of Dr. King's life and his immortal message that now belongs to the ages.
We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand.
Town Hall was packed with people from as far away as Pennsylvania to celebrate the accomplishments made in the fight for equality in the past half-century and to respond to several present-day incidents of racial intolerance and violence that we see today. Event organizers recognized the achievements of Judy Parody, a key leader in Arlington and a champion of social justice and diversity, who succumbed to cancer last year. Music was provided by the Brotherhood Chorus from the Concord Baptist Church in Milton, Mass. And the keynote speaker was Michael Curry from the NAACP Board of Directors. Celebrants say this annual event, which began 31 years ago, helps all of us to move forward as one, with a fierce determination to advance truth, decency, and equality, a cause for which Dr. Martin Luther King gave his life.
So I'm a part of a multi-ethnic faith and fellowship group called the Boston Fellows, and I think one thing that has come up in several conversations is the ways that we're engaging each other from a racial standpoint in the church. And so I know that the Black church specifically played an immense role in the civil rights movement, Dr. Martin Luther King being one of the figureheads in that. And it's just been a really good experience to fellowship with the people in the Boston Fellows, but also engage in conversations about race and reconciliation through the lens of faith.
It just highlights the fact that from a rudimentary perspective, from a structural perspective, we have deep wounds in the country. We have some deep structural issues that need to be rectified, specifically when it comes to race. And so being here and celebrating somebody that, just really thought beyond just his kids growing up, but thought about many generations thereafter, it's very important to continue to celebrate the hero that he is in American history.
The life of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was something that I followed closely. When I was a young person and in college, his teachings of nonviolence and what it was about the beloved community really leads to action. Action in addressing poverty, action in addressing nonviolence, and action in looking at things like the minimum wage to help address poverty. So the lessons that he taught us are more important now than ever before.
Representatives from 4 area groups began this yearly tradition right here in 1989, led by Arlington's Interfaith Association.
After years of planning and voter approval, Arlington's public high school is getting ready for its transformation. Site work will begin in just a few weeks, and officials tell us if you want to walk the lawn or take pictures before the work crews arrive, now is the time. Pre-construction work, such as laying down new sewer and utility lines, will start in the next coming weeks. The Pierce practice field will be closed off, and fencing will go up around the front lawn, where ultimately the front of the all-new $291 million high school will stand. High School Building Committee member Amy Spears says it's an exciting time and one that they will be watching carefully, both physically and financially.
I think a lot of people are going to start waking up. Everybody's kind of like, oh yeah, I know it's happening. Wait, it's happening now? We've been talking about the construction starting in the fall, but really there's a lot of work that has to happen now to get ready for those steel beams to go up in the fall. But the market is changing at an incredibly rapid rate, especially for HVAC, for the heating and cooling and mechanical systems. So that's been something that we're watching very carefully.
A forum on the construction will be held Tuesday, February 4th at Lowe Auditorium in the high school.
Arlington now has its first ever coordinator of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We told you last week Jillian Harvey was hired for the new position last month, a position that aims to better understand the many challenges Arlington residents are facing. Ms. Harvey's path to Arlington began when she was studying at UMass Amherst, where she says she felt the need to advocate for those who were underrepresented. We caught up with Ms. Harvey at this week's MLK birthday observance at Town Hall.
I'm really starting to focus on the commissions I'm going to be working with, Human Rights Commission, Disability, and Rainbow. And so I'm getting that piece sort of sorted out. But I'm going to be working with the town manager to really see what his goals are as well. And we're actually starting some trainings this week for some town employees on racial equity. So starting there, but I'm really going to take the first couple months, I want to say, to really get a better understanding of the people here and start to hear some of the voices that haven't quite been heard. So I'm looking to do a lot of different forms of community outreach to see what the actual needs of community members are. Because my biggest thing is having individuals speak on behalf of others. I think everyone needs to be brought to the table.
Since Harvey's the first person to hold this position, she says her responsibilities will be plenty. And being an artist as well, she welcomes the creativity that this unique position allows. It's no secret that Arlington is steeped in rich American history, and there's a historic building in town that was set to be demolished a half-century ago. But because of the great work of some town visionaries, the Old Schwamb Mill is now one of the most precious pieces of Arlington's past. And ACMi News intern Anim Osmani reports that's cause for months-long 50th birthday bash.
The oldest continuously running mill site in the nation will be celebrating 50 years on Saturday, January 25th.
The Old Schwamb Mill is located on the oldest continuously operating mill site in America, meaning there has been a mill on this property since the 1680s, and we continue to produce a product, in this case picture frames, continuing into the 21st century.
The Old Schwamb Mill will be celebrating its 50th anniversary by showcasing the She Did It Women Saving History exhibit, mainly highlighting Patricia Foots Maurice and her contribution to the preservation of Arlington's most treasured historical site.
Patricia had the vision to see its potential. And so she started a board of directors to help her in her mission to save a place that's been making picture frames since 1864. It's the last place in the world where picture frames are made in a very old-fashioned way.
Other women featured in this exhibit are Pamela Cunningham, Amy Lowell, Eliza Otis, and Louise Gronshield, all who had a massive role in preserving the sites we all still see today.
The papers to the mill become a museum were signed on January 16th, 1970. So here we are in 2020, 50 years later, and it's January. So, we thought, this is the time to look back over the last 50 years, and we're doing it through photographs taken of friends who have been involved in helping the museum to thrive over 5 decades.
To learn more about the history and the women who helped safeguard it, check out the exhibit in one of Massachusetts' oldest museums. Admission is open to the public, and there is a suggested donation of $5. The opening reception is at 1 p.m., and the exhibit will be showcased till June 6, 2020. For ACMi News, I'm Animo Osmani.
Several mills have been located at the main building site since the 17th century. After being saved 50 years ago, the Old Schwamb Mill was listed on the U.S. National Register of Historic Places.
Great to see the work going on there. Well, last week we told you that Arlington's dockless Lime bike sharing system is pedaling out of town. The California-based company will not be renewing its contract with 16 area towns and cities, including Arlington. Well, this green may soon be replaced with blue. Town leaders say blue bikes may be standing by to flood the local bike share market. They say blue bikes, which are used in Boston, Brookline, and Cambridge, is currently in talks with several former Lime municipalities, including Arlington. And they act pretty much the same way as the Lime bikes of old, except they are docked at designated racks. Blue Bikes is hoping to expand when the weather changes in the next months.
It's cold outside, but that shouldn't be stopping you from enjoying the many fun activities we have in town. And once again, here's ACMi News intern Anim Osmani with a look at just a few events to keep you warm.
The Regent Theater is providing back-to-back screenings starting with Rolling Stone, Life and Death of Brian Jones from January 30th to February 1st. This is considered to be the first documentary about the founder and leader of the Rolling Stones. The film looks into all the theories, some plausible, some downright outlandish, regarding Brian Jones' mysterious death. Does your theory gel with all the others flying around in the ethosphere? $12 for advanced ticket sales, $15 at the door. We guarantee you will get satisfaction. On February 1st, the Regent Theater switches gears to a child-friendly screening with The Lorax in observation of the Jewish holiday Tu B'Shavat. Attendees will be given a paper bag full of fun and surprises at the door, including DIY movie props, snacks, and your very own scrumptious truffula seed. Also, you may learn how to speak for the trees. If you're into traveling to mystical wonderlands, Arlington Family Connections will be presenting the Tanglewood Marionettes with the performance of the Fairy Circus on February 2nd at Thompson Elementary School. The Fairy Circus puppets are geared towards children from pre-K to 2nd grade and will perform a variety of acts, such as dancing, playing instruments, juggling, and flying through the air. On February 7th, it'll be that time of year again where Jam and Java will be hosting open mic at Kickstand Cafe. Performer sign-ups are at 6 o'clock and all are welcome to jam out tunes of their own or listen in. Admission is free. For ACMi News, I'm Anim Osmani.
There's little debate over the fact that sports of any kind and the culture in which sports events are played are inextricably linked. Such is the case with Upton Bell, who, before being general manager of the New England Patriots, was an NFL scout for the Baltimore Colts in the 60s when the fight for civil rights tore at the very fabric of our nation. Bell traversed the Jim Crow South in his bright white Lincoln Continental, looking for the next football phenomenon. As a scout hopscotching through the Bible Belt, Bell says his eyes were open to the prejudice and the fight for equality during the tumultuous decade that changed history forever.
As we observe Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy and Black History Month in February, sadly, Bell says the battle for equality is still being waged all across the country.
The right halfback, also living in Baltimore, number 24, the former Penn State star, Lenny Moore, and a threat to go the distance anytime he gets his hands on the ball. Moore is 6'1", 190 pounds.
The great thing about sports is it brings out onto the front page, on the television, our real problems in this country. The thing is that sports brings it to the forefront. We can see it there. There's no such thing as subtle racism as we see in regular life. I can remember leaving on a trip, the first trip, going through Virginia, the Shenandoah Valley, and then across into Tennessee and up through the hills and the towns, and then over to Mississippi, into Alabama. You know, I started out, I was 24, 25 years old. That's a kid. That's still a kid today. But the one thing that I do remember was, and it was either in Mississippi or Alabama, somebody said, well, asked me what I did, and I said, I'm a scout with the Colts, and the guy looks out the window and sees this huge Lincoln Continental, somebody called it Moby Dick. And he said, ain't no scouts around here that drive that damn thing. And I said, no, I really am a scout. And he said, well, yeah, you're 5 years removed from our last lynching. And I went like, really? I didn't say anything, but I thought, wow, this is reality.
But the whole trouble with this integration business is that in the end, it probably will end up with mixing socially. And you will have, well, I think their aim is mixed marriages and becoming equal with the whites.
It's what I would call the ultimate wake-up call. You know, now you're here.
I'm not for integration, I'm for segregation, and I will be until I die.
Mississippi is a state that has consistently resisted any move to rid itself of racism.
It was American apartheid. It was South Africa before South Africa. And you could drive through these little towns and the African American community totally separate. And only would maybe come to town to go to the store. Something out of a movie. To be a scout, you had to drive to these places. You couldn't fly into them. And you would see it. It was a separate world.
Go. West, west of the west. Young guys, pay attention. We're going to run straight at him.
I'm still going to Alabama with Bear Bryant there, and Mississippi with Johnny Vaught. But I kept saying to myself, I've seen some pretty good players, but they're not as good as the players I'm seeing at these African American schools.
Good. I don't care who you are. I'm going to do every one of you. Ready? Buck, let's go, Buck. Good, Buck. Good, Buck. Good, Buck. Buck.
I never heard of Selma until I kept getting closer and closer to Selma because I was going to take it through and go on to Birmingham to the University of Alabama. You know, I'd listen to radio reports. Well, Martin Luther King will be arriving and there's going to be a march across Edmund Pettus Bridge.
Be detrimental to your safety to continue this march, and I'm saying that this is an unlawful assembly. You have to disperse. You are ordered to disperse, go home, or go to your church.
And so as I got closer to Selma, I stopped at a gas station. And I said, fill her up, whatever else is, and I wanted to go to the bathroom. And I get out and I looked over and it said whites. Now I knew this. It said whites and then it said blacks or the N-word. I emerge from it, get in my car, and I say to the guys pumping the gas, I said, geez, that's terrible. The two words that could have cost me my life. And he said, listen, I think he said something, listen, you son of a bitch. If you don't like it, he said, I'll go back in and I'll get my gun and blow your brains out. He wasn't kidding. And so I quickly said, thank you, sorry, and took off. I always had these, the thoughts about, Jesus, one wrong move and I'm going to end up face down the Chattahoochee River somewhere. And that was always a real concern. I've seen history. I've seen history more than anybody. And I've seen history of race in America through the eyes of sports, but also the outside eyes.
We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.
It's easy for us as white people to say this, but suppose I was Art Shell. Suppose I was Jerry Rice or Otis Taylor. How would I really even feel today? I made it. I'm happy I made it. But there is a difference.
Lenny Moore taking the handoff from the quarterback, John Unitas.
I can think of all of those great players. I knew a lot of them. And I said to myself, if I was sitting here today, would I be bitter? I think I might be.
Bell says professional sports, including football, are ideal venues to bring up the great social issues of our time, like the fight for equality, which in the 21st century remains an ongoing battle.
Speaking of sports, there are many activities taking place at Arlington High School in the new year, in the midst of the winter season.
We have all your Arlington High School action. Let's turn it over to Studio B.
Welcome to the Ponderscope, your Arlington High School news, updates, and more. On January 25th, Stand Club will be hosting its annual Battle of the Bands. It will contain 6 student bands of varying styles and 1 teacher band, the Educated Guests. It will be held at the Regent Theater at 7:30, and tickets will be $15 in advance and $18 at the door. Hope to see you there. Starting now, the lunch order will slightly change. Fusco House will now be taking second lunch, Downs House will take first lunch, and column and physical education classes will stay at third. If you're unsure which lunch to take, ask your teachers. Do you want to make the world a better place? If so, please join Zachary Post, a 7th grader at Audison Middle School, who has chosen to support a charity called Good Sports as part of his bar mitzvah money. Good Sports is a non-profit company that creates opportunities in sports and physical activity for kids through donation of brand new sports equipment, apparel, and footwear. On Monday, January 27th, Arlington High School will be treated to a professional production of the play Thurgood, the life story of our first African-American Supreme Court Justice, Thurgood Marshall. Select classes will be attending the school assembly. The A-Town Teen Film Festival takes place on March 24th at the Regent Theater. The deadline for submissions is March 9th. Narrative films, documentaries, music videos, and art films are all accepted. Submissions must be under 10 minutes in length. Details are online at acmi.tv/atown. If you need help creating a film, contact ACMi's youth coordinator at kevin@acmi.tv. I'm Chandler Betts, and this has been the Ponderscope. Now, Nick, what's happening with boys basketball?
Well, Chandler, they've actually been struggling a little bit as of late. With their last 8 games of the season remaining, they have to win 6 of the 8 in order to qualify for the tournament.
That's going to be a big push. What's their schedule looking like?
Well, the boys basketball team has been on the road lately, taking a win against Reading 65-54. Following that, they faced a great defense in Woburn and lost 58-29. Then, they traveled to Medford and lost 56-47. They'll host Lexington at home on Friday the 24th. Tip-off is set for 7 p.m. Girls basketball had a tough week on the road, with 2 close losses to Reading, 48-44, and then Woburn, 42-37. Determined to get back on track, they beat Linfield in a nail-biter on Wednesday, with a score of 28-27. They close out a week at home against Lexington on Friday, starting at 5:30. Boys hockey has stayed strong, beating Wilmington 4-1 on Saturday and fighting back against the top Pope Francis team to tie 2-2.
Murphy floats it up the middle, and here comes an Arlington breakout. Missouri scores! Anthony Missouri! A beautiful goal. It's a nice pass. A beautiful pass by Ryan Davies, but Anthony whistled that one. He'd been quiet for a couple games, but there's a nice goal from Anthony Missouri. The Arlington boys tie it up. There is joy in Mudville.
They face Burlington at home on Saturday the 25th. Puck drops at 8. Girls hockey also continued their solid season, beating Wilmington 4-2 on Saturday and tying a talented Longmeadow 1-1 on Monday. On Wednesday, they hosted Winchester in a big league matchup and won 2-1. They'll host Burlington on Saturday the 25th at 6 p.m. at the Eddie Burns Arena. The wrestling team has a lot of talent as well. On Saturday, they won all 3 of their matches against Worcester, 24-0, Hopkinton, 44-30, and Concord Carlisle, 45-29. They travel to Burlington on Friday the 24th for another matchup. That's all for this week's edition of Sports Update as we inch closer to the playoffs. I'm Nick Antonakis. Back to you at Studio A.
Thank you guys, and don't forget to stay with us for all your latest news and sports updates. And that'll do it for us here at ACMi Studio A. I'm Tyler Valancourt.
And I'm Brenda Mahoney. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week.
You can always check out our latest segments and newscasts on the web at acmi.tv/news. And don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at ACMi News. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. You'll find us at youtube.com/ACMi News. If you have any news tips for us or wish to become a citizen journalist, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at news@acmi.tv or stop by ACMi Studio A at 85 Park Avenue.